Ah, welcome, welcome. How's it going, everybody? Just gonna get a few last minute things set up here to make this good for everyone. And we can rock and roll. Welcome. Oh, y'all don't need me in surround sound though. So yeah, um, just had some time this afternoon and figured I would do something fun for the people here on the YouTubes. And we would share something, I don't know if I'd say private as much as it's something new that you kind of get to see first and get to have some input on. Mostly because these intros, transitions are going to be used just for YouTube anyway. I'm not really going to be using these anywhere else. I mean, I have some that I use for streams, some little stingers between scenes and stuff, but that's not really a thing you're going to see here. So this is kind of a case where my YouTube stuff is going to look different than my streaming stuff, though it's all branded the same, colored the same, same feel, same style. But just the purposes are different. So it's kind of why I wanted to show it here on YouTube. But one of the things that's interesting right now, and I was thinking about this just yesterday, maybe the day before, was that we've got alchemy stuff coming up in what, 2 weeks? And I'm not totally sure alchemy's needed this time. And this is kind of one of those things that I was thinking about right when they first announced alchemy. Like we were kind of into it a little bit when they made the initial announcement because there was a lot of problems with standard, right? You had Auron's Epiphany and other stuff going on that we just didn't like, right? It was making the format very boring. A bunch of cards couldn't be played. You had Faceless Haven in a bunch of decks, right? Like there was a bunch of things going on. So that kind of made sense, right? But right now, we're kind of in an okay place in standard. Now, best of three is starting to, I guess, kind of come to a head a little bit, where there's kind of like 4 or 5 popular decks. But even then, there's a variety between them. And so that's not necessarily the worst thing, right? You've still got Orzhov Control, you've got the Naya Enchantment Rune decks, you've got Mono White Aggro, you got a variety of things that are happening. So that's actually kind of okay. I don't really have a problem with that. But this is kind of one of the times already, and this is only like the second iteration of alchemy. It's like, well, when standard's good, do we really need alchemy? And I think that's a real question we need to ask. Like, do we need this every set? Like, it should be, I don't know if I want to say like an emergency button or whatever, but a contingency plan, if you will. If for whatever reason standard goes sideways, we could at least fix it in the digital world, right? Make it more entertaining. But if I look at kind of what we're playing against in, at least in best of one, outside of the days where you play against like 3 or 4 Orzhov control decks, there's really not that big of a problem. Like it's actually pretty cool. We play against a lot of stuff. Even in the last few videos, we got to play against I think like today's video, we got to play against a couple of mill decks. We played against some like Dimir Control. I think we played against a Selesnya Enchantments deck, Mono Green Aggro, right? Like we got a good spread over whatever that was, 6 or 7 matches. So I don't really see that as a problem. So I will still look at alchemy and still make some alchemy content when it launches because there'll be people who want to see things or whatever and it makes sense for business. But I'm just not sure if we really need it this set. And that's a weird thing. And it kind of comes up because somebody asked yesterday in one of the YouTube comments, like, is there a card I'm looking for rotating this year? Which, first off, that rotation is still 8 months away or whatever, so we got a long time. But I thought about it and said, like, there's really nothing. I mean, outside of, like, let's get rid of some of the sweepers. But, the 2 big problematic ones in Farewell and Meathook Massacre ain't going anywhere for a while. So outside of those, I don't really have anything that on top of my head is like, if this card went away, we'd all be happier or whatever, right? That's not even a thing right now. And that's a good thing, right? Like that's what you want. You want all the cards to be fun and interesting and people want to play a bunch of Magic and whatever. So I don't have anything that's sitting on top of my mind like we have to get rid of these cards for us to be happier, right? So I don't know if there is a card I want to see rotate or banned or whatever right now, which is, yeah, like I said, just good. I think this is where we want to be in Standard. But if that's the way we feel, like I said, that comes back to the other point of, do we even need alchemy right now? Like I don't know. Like, now don't get me wrong. I feel, and this is a real criticism. I feel like on some level, we left out some of the power for samurai and ninjas because we're going to get some stuff in alchemy. Like almost like it was preceded to where, like, well, I know you want to play these and they're only okay. But when alchemy comes out, if you really want to play samurais or you really want to play ninjas, now you can play them, right? So now there's incentive for people to want to buy into alchemy. I feel like that's what happened. I hope I'm wrong, truthfully. I really do. But I don't think I am. But I'm hoping I am in a weird way, because otherwise people are going to only want to play it so they can play like the good samurai deck or the good ninja deck. You know, like, and that's not what we really should be turning that product or format into. Tremura says, it seems that alchemy made a big boom when it launched, but then everybody went right back to being more interested in standard. You know, I think that's going to be the cycle, right? That people can play a format, effectively get bored with it, you know, or whatever, get their fill of it. Some people will continue to play it. Some will move back. But then the next set comes out, right? Like, you have a regular standard for something like 4 to 6 weeks. Then you get an alchemy supplement, we'll call it. And that's the next thing for, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks while we're waiting for the next set to launch. And then we get the next set. So that kind of seems like that's going to be the rotation of people are going to play some alchemy, people are going to come back, play some standard, then they're going to rotate back to alchemy. Like, you know, whatever the new hotness is, or whatever the big tournaments are that people are running. Like, people focus on those formats. It's kind of like back in paper when people were playing for PTQs and Grand Prix season or whatever. If it happened to be modern season, everybody was playing modern. If it happened to be standard season, everybody was playing standard. Right? So it's kind of the same thing, but in a digital realm, where whatever the thing is people are talking about, or wherever the focus is, that's going to drive a lot of the traffic. And then it'll come back around. Matt Gwynn says, I think the same way about Ninja and Samurai. Yeah, it's hard not to. Like, Ninja, maybe not. Ninja at least got a lot of things, and maybe it's mostly fine right now. Like, it's just, because of the nature of how ninjutsu works, it doesn't make sense to play a ninja heavy deck, right? It just doesn't, compared to a lot of other aggro decks. But Samurai, like, it feels like it needs a lot of help. Honestly, the thing about Samurai that stuff is, the Samurai, like, at least with ninjas, the cards we got do things, right? Like, you can kill creatures, you can make mana, you can make your opponent discard, you can do all these things, right? Like, there's ninjas that do real things. But the only real samurai people really want to play with are the one that you can sacrifice and protect a creature. Ishin, which Ishin doesn't really work with a lot of the other samurai very well, because a lot of samurai are bad. And then Ryu, because getting an extra attack step is pretty sweet, right? And that's pretty much it. Like, the other rare one, the 3-mana one, she doesn't really do much. She's just a 3/3 with haste most of the time. Like, they just, you know, you have overcosted ninjas that, like, if this attacks, you could play something out of your graveyard or whatever. It's like, okay, fine. But the card itself isn't very good. Whereas at least most of the ninjas are fairly costed, and you got some that work well with rogues. So you kind of got, like, some existing cards that work well with that tribe. You didn't really, like, you kind of got that with Samurai, because you get Samurai and Warriors, but they don't really work well together. You know, that's kind of a weird thing. So we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I could be wrong entirely. I hope so, but I don't feel like I'm going to be. And they said it's not going to be a huge alchemy release. You're talking about, they said about 30 cards, whereas the first launch was like 62 or 64, something like that. They said the next launch from here forward should be about 30. So I'm going to assume that means anything from 25 to as much as 35. So roughly half or less of what we got last time. And I'm okay with that. Like, that's a small number of cards to try to get your hands on. I think the first alchemy launch was a little tough because we were all trying to get so many cards, and like 80% of them were rare, or mythic, so that was a little bit of a pain. But with only 30 new cards, even if we say 80% are mythic or rare, like, that's a lot, but not a daunting number or daunting odds of getting what you want necessarily if you buy the alchemy packs. So that feels much more reasonable. But yeah, you know, we'll see. So here's what we're gonna do. And now that we've got into the stream a little bit, I'm gonna switch scenes, and we're gonna look at. Y'all are gonna get to see this with me. So we're gonna look at a batch. I set up the windows so we could view these. So just so everybody has background on what I did here, I reached out to a bunch of people, and I had some people that in my social circles on like Twitter, Discord, whatever, to produce what we're gonna call logo transition scenes, right? Not necessarily like true intros that are run, but kind of like the little video you see after I do the cold open and we go into the deck list, and you see kind of like it shows little pictures and it flips and it says like fun, you know, informative, blah blah, whatever, and then the dragon logo. So I like that, but I wanted to update it. I feel like I've been using it for a while. It's a thing I kind of put together using a service that's pretty cheap. Like, I wanted something completely custom. So I went out, I tried to get some people to do it. The people that did it did an admirable job, you know, but it was what I got from them were very basic. So I reached out to Fiverr, and I figured I would pay a little bit more and just say like, hey, here's the specifics that I needed. So while we're watching this, understand that here's what I asked for. I showed some examples of other transition scenes and said, I would like something akin to this, where I can fade in, fade out, move from cold open to the rest of the meat of the video. So they understood what I was asking for. Also said, you know, had to incorporate logo colors, obviously. If we could put the fun, informative chill in there somewhere, that would be cool, because that's kind of the thing we stick to here on the channel. And something completely custom, you know, something a little different than what other people have seen that makes sense using just my logo, my brand, something that fits with my content. So I link them to my stuff so they could see, you know, what all I do. So hopefully what we get from these is completely custom. Now, I want to say this about Fiverr as well. One of the things you have to be careful of, especially doing it like this, where we're doing kind of like a reveal thing, I had to look and see like what the delivery times were. So I bought them and they all delivered within the same like 24-hour period. The reason being that if something gets delivered to you on Fiverr and you do not respond within 3 days, it's considered final. And so basically what happens is on Fiverr, you go, you search through all the people, you can search for the type of services, whatever. And you can get a lot of stuff on Fiverr, by the way. If you want voiceover work for a thing, you want somebody to do a song for you, like there's all types of things you can get on Fiverr. But you basically buy the service and it goes into effectively like escrow, right? It goes to Fiverr and sits there. So you're basically saying, here's my payment. Let's get to work on the thing, right? So the person you contract goes to work on the thing. They deliver in the set amount of time they say they're going to deliver. You review it. If it's good, cool. If not, you ask for revisions, which the number of revisions you get is in their ad or whatever, right? So once it's done, you confirm it. The money goes to them. You can also add a tip or whatever if it's exceptionally good, or maybe they delivered sooner than they said or whatever. And then you're good to go. Now, again, if you don't respond when they do send you the initial thing in 72 hours, it automatically goes to complete and they release that money to the creator. So something to be aware of if you're on Fiverr, if you're going to get like multiple things done. Now, I know the other thing is too, somebody said like, why would you get multiple things done knowing you're not going to use them? Well, in my head, I had an idea I was going to use 2 of them because I use one kind of between scenes. And then, actually, technically, I use 3. I use one as the beginning transition scene that you see, right? When we go from the cold open to the deck list. And then I use one between games, which is like the circle one that kind of comes in and goes out. And then I use the one with the broken screen where it cracks down or whatever as we go to the review and wrap up to end the video. So I have an opportunity to replace 3 things if I get 3 quality pieces. So I didn't mind reaching out to multiple people. And I'm hoping I get at least 2 things that are usable, and that'll be fun, right? It changes the look, the feel of the videos and whatever. So I'm hoping they delivered something good. Now, I did also get, hey, Chris Cass, how's it going? I did get 3 different levels. So we're going to look at 3 different ones. I did one that was like pretty cheap. I want to say like 13 bucks or something. I'm not expecting a lot out of the $13 one, but hey, sometimes people surprise you, right? Matter of fact, my logo I got done on Fiverr like 2 years ago, and it was by somebody who was pretty cheap, like $30 or something, $25, something like that. And we were like, the first ones they sent me, the first two were not good. I almost bailed on the person. I was like, hey, sorry, we're just not going to use any of these. And the third attempt, I was like, yes, this is it. And they hit it. So revisions do matter. And I will say this too. If you're a creator or decide to ever do content or whatever, make friends with artists. And I'm not saying make friends because you cannot pay them. You should pay your friends. I pay my artist friends. But when you get to be friends with artists, they know you, they know your content or whatever, and it makes it easier to do things moving forward. I have two artists. One of them is just not good with transition scenes and whatever. That's not her specialty. The other is, but he was backed up, and I kind of wanted something in the next couple of weeks. So this is why I reached out to Fiverr. So anyway, let's look at this first one, and y'all can kind of tell me what you think. So I think we're gonna see 4 pieces because this first person did 2, and then each of the 2 different people did 1 each. And this first one that did 2, I only paid, like I said, I think like $13, $14 for. Okay, I could live, like, actually, I do have a problem with this. Okay, the first thing is too, I want you to know, I also asked all of them to make it easy to transition in and out of, obviously because I'm fading in and out of the scene, and to keep it about 4 to 5 seconds. Because I also wanted to shorten it down. Because the one I use now for that is like 11 or 12 seconds, and it feels too long to me. So we're going to get something shorter, which is good for keeping audience retention, right? So they see it, it registers, and you go to the next thing. It's not lingering on there too long. So I have a problem with this one, though. And I'm hoping the other thing they delivered is different. Because if not, there's going to be a real issue. Partly because, and admittedly, this was the cheap one, so I'm getting what I pay for here. But actually, okay, let's look at the other one they delivered before I say anything. Because I could be jumping the gun here. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, but we'll get to it. You're right, not chill. It doesn't fit the chill vibe for sure. I agree with you there, Derelict. Let's take a look at this. Okay, I do have a problem. Here's the thing. Like I told y'all earlier, like the ones I use now, I created using a service. And the service is fairly cheap. I think I paid like, it's $40 or something, or $60. I used it long enough to create what I needed to, downloaded all my files, and then that was it. And then I canceled my membership. And then I went back in a while later, I did a different one, canceled my membership. So basically I paid to just get what I needed, and that was it. I wasn't gonna pay monthly. I'm pretty sure this person's using the same service. And the frustrating part is, if they're using the same service, they didn't need 3 days to deliver this. They could have produced these in like 2 hours or less using that service. I'm pretty sure. And that's bothersome. Now, admittedly, this is the cheapest one by a long shot, so I got what I paid for. But realistically, I may be reaching back out to this person and being like, hey, look, I'm pretty sure I know what service this came from. I'm pretty sure I don't know about the first one, but the sound on the second one definitely comes from that service. So while these are technically unique, they are definitely not completely custom. And that's what I was asking for here, right? I don't want things that have the same effects, that have the same sounds or whatever, because that's what I'm paying for. Otherwise, I would have just waited another month and let my other artist buddy, Art by Galen, do it, right? Because Galen Ironfeld, awesome guy, by the way, does some comic book art and some other stuff. Like, he's fantastic. He's an all-around quality artist. I would have rather, like, so this one has me very disappointed. I'm very sad in that. Hey, Dragon King, how's it going? Yeah, I do like the second one more of the two. I agree with you, Chris Cass. But yeah, I'm already a little let down. I'm hoping the other two come through, because this... I'm probably going to be getting a refund on these. Oh, hey, thanks for the content. Thank you for watching. I put out a lot of content. I know it's a lot for people to consume. Okay. I'm going to go in here. Let me check my messages. Who was that person? Which bar? That was Nurum. All right. So I cannot recommend that person. And I've had some good experiences on Fiverr. So, all right. This looks like it was the most expensive one of them. Let me do the other one. What's the other one? Okay, this one's like the $30 one. All right, this already looks more promising. Like the artwork here for the video already looks better. Okay. Okay. Here we go. I want this one to be good. Like, because if this one's not good, that means I only have one that could potentially be good, and I'm going to be super disappointed. Like, this was going to be a bad experiment if this didn't work. All right. And this one's only 4 seconds, so they didn't go the full 5 seconds. So I'm hoping they hit the mark solid. Oh, okay. That's really good. That's really good. That's so cool. That's like exactly what we're looking for. Like this is great. I want to watch this like 10 times. Like, and see, this is what I'm saying, like completely custom, right? Like it's clean, which uses like the examples I showed them was some other creators I use or that I follow, and they have very clean transition. Like this was very cool. Like the lines coming in and out do like a clean wipe on the screen. Like the PowrDragn logo like sets in very quickly, and then you have a little bit of motion to the video. Like this is really cool. Like this is worth every bit of the $30. Like honestly, I feel like this is worth more than $30. Like I'm probably gonna have to give this person a tip, truthfully, because like this feels way better than $30. Like I honestly, I watched it and I had a smile, like instantly. Like that's how I feel about this one. Like it's really good. Like, and what I like about it is this artist for just 4 seconds put so much in there. Like even I just noticed as well too, like there's a little bit of like green fire that comes out of the mouth. Like they have a little sparkle on the nerdy glasses. Like they crammed a lot in 4 seconds. Like, oh, so good. So good. Like this one is one we will be using. I'm going to find a place to put it. Like it's going to go somewhere. Like this is one we will definitely be using. Like so far, I've watched it, what, 6 times already? And every time I'm finding something little they did with it that's really good. Even the transition from like white to black. Like it's very subtle in the very beginning and very end. How it like fades into white and then fades out to black. Like it's excellent. Now I hope it's done. Did they provide a WebM file? Hopefully they did, because that'll make it easier to work with. But either way, awesome. This one is excellent. Most importantly, that's exactly it, Derelict. Like it captures all the feel, and that's the biggest thing. If I could tell y'all anything, when you go to work with a new creator or, like I said, Fiverr or anybody else, make sure you communicate to them exactly what you want. And I took the time to, like, you know, they have like a 2,000 character limit or whatever it is. I used a big chunk of it saying like, here's some people I follow. Here's what my content's about. Here's some examples. I put links to them, right? Like, this is what I'm wanting in there. Here's how I plan to use it, right? So I gave them as much to work with as possible. Because I think sometimes people just say like, hey, here's my logo or here's what my thing is and make something for me. And that's tough for the artist because they're having to go like, well, let me see what information I can find about you. And here's the thing. Hopefully you like it and you pay me for it, right? I feel like if you give them the most information, you have them all. You know what it is? It's like when you're on a dating app, right? The more information you put in there, the more likely you are to find somebody that matches. When you don't put anything in there, well, you're going to get a bunch of people that go like, they look hot or they don't, and that's it, right? Because you're not giving them anything else to work with. And this is kind of the same thing. It's a working relationship. Give them enough to work with. But this, golly, like this is super good, man. Like, I don't, I literally am like, I can't wait to use this. Like, this is super good. Wow. Wow. Like, all right. Well, this one we know we're using. I can stay on this one all day. We know for sure we're going to use that one. Let me check out the other one. And this was the most expensive of the three. This one cost me like $75 or something. All right, this one already looks better. Not bad, like with the little thumbnail. So I'm into it. Let's see what this says for us. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. I will say this. I like this one a lot. I really do. I don't like what they did with the fun, informative chill. It feels like that was just kind of tossed in as an afterthought. Whereas in the other one, it felt like part of the logo or part of the project. You know what I mean? Like, because I like the whole fire effect. The bouncy dragon for a little bit of motion or whatever. I'm good with that. And I think I know ways I could use this. And I also don't mind having multiples. So maybe I use one for the gameplay content and I use one for other stuff, right? Depending. But my issue here is like it feels incomplete. Man, I feel so bad because so much work. This is one I can tell a lot of work went into, right? With the fire effects and the motion on the logo, like even how they like drop in the letters, like the PowrDragn, like they put real thought into this, right? I'm into it. I just need something done with that like fun, informative chill. It literally, like I would almost, if they can't do anything with the wording, I would rather it just not be in there. You know what I mean? That's kind of like my hold up there. Because this is really, really good. Like, truly good. Yeah, like, and I'm good with this. Like, we can use this on multiple ways. It's also 5 seconds. They kept it short. Like, I could do a lot with this. But I just... Because like I said, on the other one, the fun, informative chill, like, they even colored it certain ways so it looked like it was part of the piece. That's literally... like the first thing that stood out that I don't like on this. It just felt incomplete. Like, which is sad to say that because everything else looks so good in this one. But that looks like the one thing they didn't include. The red fire is so much, almost too much for me. The only thing I would say to that is when I go back to them, the only revision I'm going to make there is to have the fire be more green than red, or some tones of green and black, so it still gives you the illusion of fire but in the same colors, because obviously we don't use a lot of red on our stuff. I think even on my streams, if you catch my live streams or I'm on Twitch or whatever, I have the smallest little red fireball that comes out of the logo's mouth, and that's about it. It breathes fire, but nothing else. I don't even mind the sound effects they put on this. I'm good with that. But yeah, like the fire effect, that's the only thing I would change. And then, like I said, the wording, the words are just, man. I almost feel like because we mentioned it, when I mentioned it to them, because I even said, like, hey, if you can't get the fun, informative chill in the actual piece, that's fine. Like, I actually have no problem. If the rest is good enough and that's not in there, I am totally good with that. But I think that's the issue for me. That, like, even the fire I could almost live with, but this literally feels like an afterthought that they just threw in the wording, because everything else is so good. It's so bright. It has like the flashy like light effect on it and everything else. Like, you can tell they did real work, but that there's literally nothing on the lettering. It kind of just comes into the scene and it's just you know, feels like they didn't do much with it. So those are going to be my two things there. I still want to use this one, so I'm gonna go back to the artist for sure. See you later, Derek. So I'm gonna go back to the artist on that one for sure, and we're gonna use it. But man, the middle cost one hit it out of the park. I mean, this is literally like this one for sure. Yeah, this one 100% checks the boxes. Like, no hate here at all. Like this one's. This one's, I don't know if I'd say perfect, but it's pretty close. Like, when I look at that, I'm like, what else would I do? Not much. Like that one, cool. And they did it in 4 seconds. You know, like the bottom words need to be flashy. Yeah, they need to just have something. Be bolder, be three-dimensionalized, like anything in that other one. They just need some extra work done to them. But yeah, and this is a good example, right? Where this one was half the price of the other one, and it was exceptionally good. Like I'm gonna have, like I said, I'm not even gonna have any revisions for that one. I'm just gonna be sending it, like sending a tip to the person and saying, "Hey, completed, we're good," and that's gonna be totally fine. So yeah, I'm totally good with that. So yeah, there you go. The first ones, you know, just for those who just joined the chat, we'll go back and show the first ones again. But these two were highly disappointing because I'm pretty sure how the person did these, and I'm pretty sure they used the same service that I've used in the past. And if they have, they're basically paying a monthly service for like $40, $50 to where they can just generate these and, you know, make 13 to 20 bucks a shot, which is fine. I'm not begrudging them for making money. But when I'm asking you specifically, I want a completely custom thing, and you kind of just use a deal and you didn't really treat these at all. And the way these services work, by the way, is you can go in and they have like, I don't know, hundreds of different things depending on what you need. And you basically just put in the colors. If you have a logo or something you want to use or some art piece, you put that in there. And then it does the work to try to jam them all together. And then you get the output. But I've used that service and I've put stuff out from it in like, I don't know, not even a couple of hours. So the fact that they took 3 days to deliver these two pieces that I'm 99% sure, because like I said, I feel like I've seen this lighting effect before. The sound effects feel similar to me from this service. Like this one for sure, I know this sound is part of that services packages. And it's auto included. You don't even have to go add it yourself. Like, I bet if I went through the files on my computer, I could find where I've downloaded one of these with that sound, actually, from that service that I ended up not using. So this one, I'm going to be getting a full refund, most likely, but it was only 13 bucks, so whatever. You know, I'm not going to be that bent out of shape about it. If this had been one of the more expensive ones that would have done that, I would have been pretty bothered, but it's whatever, right? It's 13 bucks. I'll live. $14, I guess, with taxes and all. So, like, I'll live. But, yeah, that second one, y'all can expect to see that one probably by the end of this week. I'm going to definitely be using that on some stuff. If I can get some revisions on the more expensive one with the fire effects and everything, I will likely be including that one as well. So, we may be using both of those through various pieces. But, man, the first ones, the cheap ones, I'm very disappointed in. Very, very disappointed in. But, you know, again, you get what you pay for, right? If you're going to go in and you're looking for the best deal and you're going to contract somebody. Hey, Insidious, how's it going? Like, if you're going to contract somebody that's got, you know, a $20 or less price, well, you know, you can only expect $20 service. There's a reason that when you pay somebody, it can cost you anywhere from 50 bucks to 100 bucks to get a quality piece done. Right? You're paying for time, for skill, whatever. Just keep that in mind. Like, you know, like I said, not even disappointed in the $13 one because I'm getting what I pay for. Like, I expected it to be the lowest quality of the three, and they were definitely the lowest quality of the three. Right? So I'm like, yeah. And I'm just going to explain that to the person. Like, hey, I'm pretty sure where this came from. I used a similar service. I can't pay for this, right? These are not usable. They're not unique. I mean, they're unique. They're not custom. And that's what I was asking for. And that's how they marketed it. They marketed it as like, I will make you a custom thumbnail or custom intro, blah, blah. And it's like, they're really not. You know, they're, like I said, they're unique, but not custom. But the other two, that second one, I'm still smiling about that second one. That second one is so good. So good. I don't know how they did it so fast, honestly. Like, I don't feel like I paid enough. I'm going to leave them a very good tip on that one. Like, I paid $30. I'm probably going to leave them a $20 tip. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, that's because I feel like they did $40 to $50 worth of work for $30. Like, and honestly, maybe even more than that. Even with the $20 tip, I may not be paying them enough, honestly. So we'll see. But I wanted to give y'all at least like a heads up and insight of something that you'll be able to see on the channel, because I think that's pretty cool. That, you know, it's going to be something mostly for YouTube. So I figured y'all can get to see it first, because why not? The other thing, too, is I will be having a video. I just got the stuff edited for the playmats. If you haven't seen them, the actual art, if you missed that stream, I'm going to have the video up for those. And for something else, oh, a box opening that we did, we'll have that as well. So we're covering a lot of things there that will be up on the channel very, very soon. So lots of cool stuff coming. And now also, do y'all, okay, trying to figure out how to word this, because I don't want to skew y'all's opinion if I'm asking you about something. But how do you feel about multiple videos coming out on a same day, right? Because a couple days ago, or just yesterday maybe, we did a video where I put out the main gameplay video, and then like a couple hours later, I had the like single game, like here's a fun game using that deck that wasn't in the other video, right? Related, but not necessarily the same. And then I've had other days where we put out like a gameplay video or something, and then I have like, hey, here's one of our Y series pieces, or here's a hidden gems piece, or whatever. Is that too much content? Is that bothersome? Should I, like, I know everybody likes the gameplay content or whatever, but like, should I have days where maybe like every Sunday or every Wednesday is just like, here's a non-gameplay piece, and we put that out? So you're not getting bombarded with notifications or whatever. Because like, I'm very curious. Like, I don't know how that comes off to y'all or how that affects y'all. You know, because I know you're getting a, hey, Nicodemus, because I know I'm not the only one you get notifications and stuff from. Like, I don't necessarily want to make following my content an unpleasant experience, but I also feel like I have a ton of information, a bunch of cool stuff I can share with you, but where do I put it, you know? Because if everybody's looking for the gameplay content and stuff, like, it's cool, I want to keep putting that out for you, but at the same time, I have a lot of other cool information that I think could really help you. All right, Juan says he's into it. Now, here's the thing, like, there's going to be some days I'm just not going to put out a gameplay video. I don't know, maybe it's only happened a couple times. So like, but I'm just asking about the days where I put out the other stuff. Because here's the thing, y'all. Like, I'm already putting out more content than anybody else. At least that I'm aware of. I mean, feel free to point them out to me if there's somebody else doing more. But I just, well, let me go look at the numbers here on Social Blade. All right, so I'm officially over 1,100 pieces of video content on my YouTube channel in, what, 25 months now? Because we just officially closed February. That's a lot. I mean, that's a whole lot. And we're already not getting the reach that other people get, even when I do single video days, when I put out multiple people. So, like, that's kind of part of it, too. Trying to figure out where the content should go. Like what, how much is too much? Am I overburdening y'all? Are people just not able to watch all of it? Right? Because it's pretty tough when I'm, and don't get me wrong, again, no shade, don't want to throw other people under the bus here, but it is a little tough when people both smaller and larger than me are getting more views per video when they're doing less work, when they're not putting as much time into editing, where they're not promoting it even as much as I'm doing mine. And I only know this because I've reached out to some of them. Right, I've literally had conversation with some of them, some in video, some via DMs on Twitter, you know, however they were able to just be reached. So that's already a little bit of a tough thing. So I'm having to figure out what is the best method or the best use of the time I'm putting out on videos. Because honestly, maybe I shouldn't just be putting out videos every day. You know, like, I mean, that's like a real question I have to ask. Like, if it's not contributing to more subscribers or people watching the content completely, should I be putting out, one, should I even be putting out stuff every day? And should I have any days where I'm putting out multiple pieces, right? I think those are real things we have to ask based on the stats that are available. Because I look at my analytics pretty regularly. One of the things I got into from doing business. And don't get me wrong, I want to be clear too. I'm not here saying that, like, things aren't working and that we're failing or whatever, because I do still get a fair amount of views and people are still watching things. But in the process of growing it and trying to play the whole discovery game and everything else, I have to think about these things on a regular basis. Chad says, I would love more content, gameplay, and then maybe a pick a card and build a deck live or something like that. That's just too much, Chris. That's just not going to happen. It's the same reason right now that y'all aren't getting the Commander content yet, right? I'm having to do that a very particular way. And then I do have an editor lined up that I'm working with that once I have that recorded, I'm going to be sending it to him to edit it and then put it up, which does have a cost. But I'm pretty sure on the days I put up Commander content, I'm probably not putting up a regular piece of gameplay content. I mean, technically, I guess the Commander games are gameplay content, so you'll get that. But that's probably all that it's going to be on those days. And I just can't justify having both of those, especially since the Commander game will probably be anywhere between 40 minutes up to probably an hour and a half anyway for the Commander game. So that's already plenty. And that's kind of the tough part, Chris, that, you know, I have to bring up is like when I do talk to people, there's a lot of people saying like, oh, I would love you to do more content. I would be awesome if you did this and I'll do that. And I'm kind of like, y'all are, and don't get me wrong, I don't mean you as in you. I just mean like as a group. I'm like, that's a lot of requests from somebody who's already putting out a lot of content and not getting the reach that other people get. Now, don't get me wrong. We've talked about this on the stream before, you know, or if you follow me on socials. If you don't know right now, there are particularly, and there's no other way to put this, so if you don't like talking about race or whatever, see you later. Like, this is a thing that's actually happening. There are black people that are having their content suppressed and groups that go out of their way to try to sabotage the reach. And we've seen it on YouTube. We've seen it on Twitch to some extent. We've definitely seen it on TikTok, right? Like, it's a thing. They go out of their way to downvote things, to report things or whatever, to try to get people's accounts locked up or videos suppressed or whatever. And then you have to go through all the song and dance or whatever with each of the companies or the brands or whatever and get your stuff unlocked or whatever. And we've had that happen before where I've had to go to our Discord and say like, hey, y'all, can you go watch this video today and upvote it because the downvote brigades are out, right? And I only know that because like a video will go live. That's no different than anything else we've done. And there's nothing even questionable or whatever in it. But you'll see, you know, the video approval rating's already down to like 80%, but it's only been up for like 45 minutes, right? So obviously those people didn't even watch the video. So you got to get your own people to go and vote it back up, whatever. However, if people are watching video and downvoting it immediately or whatever, then it's also not going to get shared as much, right? So that is unfortunately something you've got to deal with. Same thing on TikTok. There's people, I know multiple creators I've talked to that have had their channels banned that they've have to appeal with TikTok or whatever, and then TikTok reviews their account, and it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong here or whatever. So like 2 days, 3 days later, they get their account back or whatever. But all that work they put into the videos or whatever ends up not being seen by anybody. So, you know, that's a thing. So there's a lot of that stuff going on, which doesn't help our content anyway. So I'm hoping to extend my reach a few different ways. I have some ideas. I'm not going to talk about them yet, but I will when they're ready. But it's in the meantime, I have to figure out, like, what's the best thing to do for the audience and the community and the crowd that I have cultivated to this point, right? Because that's the thing. Like, you can always worry about getting more people, but it's also like, how do I make content that those of you that already watch would enjoy it more, right? Because that's kind of where it starts. Because if ultimately each of you that are already following me, like if you watched each video, and I'm not, and it's a lot when I'm putting out videos every day, I don't expect each of you to watch every single video. That just, some people just don't have time, right? I get that. But if each of you are watching each video and watching more of each video and, you know, liking, leaving a comment, sharing it, whatever, that automatically is going to do a lot to extend the reach of the video and get it recommended and put in front of more people. That's why I'm genuinely asking when I say in the videos, like, hey, if you like this video and you leave a comment and you share it, that is a huge thing. Because here's the thing, for those of you who don't know how it works, the recommendation systems on every platform, they're designed to give somebody the content that they believe will get them to stay on the platform longer. So they can sell more ads or whatever and make their revenue, which makes sense. I'm not saying it's bad in any way, it's just the way it is. So when you interact with the content, the recommendation system sees that, okay, somebody came to this piece or this video, let's use YouTube as an example, and they liked it enough that they hung around, they clicked the like button, they watched, 70, 80% of the video. Then they went and took the time to leave a comment or whatever. So like all those interactions are like, okay, this is pretty hot for somebody. All right, cool. And when you share it somewhere else, especially if it's on like Reddit or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, it sees that views are coming from another platform. So it says, okay, wait, we're getting people that like this enough that not only are they sharing it, other people there are clicking on it and coming to YouTube. All right, so we need to share this to everybody that's coming up on YouTube that's looking for Magic Arena content, because this is something people want to see, right? So then it gets recommended to more people and the reach gets higher. Now, obviously, everybody they put it in front of isn't necessarily going to want to watch it, but it increases the odds because they're putting it in front of more people. And then as more people click on it, it says, okay, cool, we're shoving it to people and people are clicking on it. We need to recommend this to more people, right? So then you just get this snowball effect. That's why the sharing and the interactions or whatever are so important, because the recommendation system's just looking for all those things that draw the most people to YouTube and then gets them to stay there the longest. So that's why I'm saying, like, hey, if you share this with somebody, that's a huge point, especially if other people click on it or whatever. I was just thinking of different space that I don't see much, and deck building is one. It's usually all gameplay. Don't get me wrong. I love that. The problem, Chris, is that nobody watches the deck building content. Like, that's the real issue. They're just like, I wish I had something better to tell you, but like, people just don't watch that. Like, what people want is a deck list that's done, ready to go, and that they think wins. That's it. I wish there was a better explanation, but every creator I've talked to, unless you get known for doing exactly only that, like if you're one of those channels that like you're known for budget content, or you're known for doing Vorthos lore of Magic or something, right? Like, then people will watch you for that. But outside of that, people don't watch that stuff. Like, one of the thing, and I have a whole like beginner channel or playlist here on my channel. If you go to look at my playlist, I have one that's just like beginner Magic tips. You can go check that out. And it gets a little bit of use. But the problem most often than not, I think it's a twofold issue. And we've talked about this live on stream before. But the people that need the deck building and strategy content the most fall into two categories. Either one, they are new enough or uninformed enough. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean that in generally, like, it's okay to be ignorant to a topic because you just don't know enough about it yet. They're either new enough or uninformed enough that they don't even know what to search for. So other than just like generic how to build a Magic deck, they don't know that, like, hey, what's a mana curve, right? Like, what's a tempo deck, right? Like, they don't know the terminology to even look for. So they can't find what they're looking for, which means your videos can't get views, because however you're labeling it to be useful, they don't know that that's even a term. The other issue is that the other people that need it the most generally tend to be the tryhards that already think they have it figured out. And again, not meaning this to be rude, I just don't know how else to classify those people. But I've seen these people over the years when I was playing semi-competitively, when I was running a store, whatever. Like, those people believe they already have it figured out, and every problem they have is not their fault, right? It's, I got unlucky, the RNG is stupid, the shuffler's bad, my opponent just top decked, blah, 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 right? Like, it's never their fault. They already have it figured out. They played the best deck. They just, for whatever reason, over the course of 12 months, seem to be the unluckiest Magic player in the history of planet Earth, right? Those are the people who probably need that content the most, and they won't even go watch it. The reality I tell people, though, is you have somebody like Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa that is one of the best all-time Magic players. There's no argument about that. Like, if he's not in your top 5 list of all-time Magic players, you're probably full of it. He's been doing strategy stuff for a while, and he has several pieces that don't draw as well as some of his gameplay content. And it's like, if you're going to get strategy from anybody, one of the best players in the world. Now, speaking of, also today, I believe he announced he just starting to do his own independent stuff that he set up a website for to do strategy stuff, and he's going to be funded completely through Patreon. So do a search, find him on Twitter, PV. I was also like Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa, like PVDDR. I don't know why I couldn't remember his initials, but yeah, go look him up over on Twitter, and you can follow his stuff. But like, he has very good content. One of the best minds in the game, and he has trouble getting reach on some of his strategy videos. Like, it's sad, but it shouldn't be a thing. But the reality is, players will say they're looking for strategy, but they're not. Most of them just want whatever the deck list is of the day so they can go try to beat people on the ladder. Like, that's literally it. Like, people are like, I want you to just build a sweet deck, and then I just want to copy that deck and then go beat people. People will copy deck lists and not even watch the videos they're attached to. Like, that's the dumbest thing, because somebody doing that video has already done a lot of the work. They've already made the mistakes. They're already giving you the strategy. You already get to see it in different matchups. But those people will just copy a deck list, you know, understand that you posted about the deck going, like my Gruul deck where it went like 15-2 or 15-3, whatever it was. There'll be people who won't watch the video, and they're like, I want to play Gruul. I'll copy this deck list. And then there's some mistakes they're going to make that I already could have told them how to prevent. But then they'll probably lose 2 or 3 games. Like, I don't know how PowrDragn won games with this or whatever. Or whoever. Right? I don't know how CGB won with this deck or whatever it is. Right? Because they're not going to put the time in to do the actual research. That's just the way it is. Chris Chaz, the shuffler's not that bad. It's really not. Like, here's the reality. I tell people, the way you can tell it's not any worse than real life is who's still winning the most and who's still losing the most. It's the same people. Like, it truly is the same people. The thing I say about the shuffler that people don't understand is I equate it to when I was playing poker, right? When I was playing video poker, when I was playing online poker, I could play 10 tables at a time, right? So let's say each table, I was going to see 15 to 20 hands an hour. Well, I'm literally seeing hundreds of hands an hour, right? Whereas if I'm playing at a real life poker table, I'm seeing maybe 12 hands an hour, maybe on a single table, if I'm lucky, and that's if the game's fast, right? Maybe just 10 hands. But anything that comes up there is not going to stand out as much because it happens so infrequently, right? So if somebody catches a 1-outer on me, it's going to feel bad, but that's like the one time it happens, probably for the next 6-7 sessions, maybe even less than that. Whereas when I'm playing online, that probably happens once an hour, right? So I can look and go like, man, my opponents are always getting lucky. It's like, no, percentage-wise, it's the same. It's just because I'm seeing so many more hands, it feels like it's happening more often. Same thing with Arena, right? If I play best of 1 and I'm on Arena and I play, I don't know, sometimes 6 games in an hour, whereas if I'm playing in paper, I might get 3 games in that hour sometimes playing the same decks. Like, over the course of a week or 2, that's going to start feeling like whatever that negative thing is happening way more often, even though it's really not. It's just not. Simeon says, I don't know anything about mana curve. I just throw half and half in there and call it a day. You know what, though? Some people do that. That's okay. Fan Syndicate says, I personally use Arena videos to become more familiar with the meta just so I know what priority. Yeah, that's a good use of that. Honestly, watching the videos can, if nothing else, tell you how to play against some of those decks because you know the mentality of what other people are trying to do with those decks. So even if you don't build the deck that's being featured, you can still learn a lot from it to apply to your game to play against it, which I think is actually a reasonable thing to do. Chris says, yeah, I use the videos to see the other decks in the meta. That's what cards are. Yep, makes total sense. We got the bots out and about today. Not a surprise. All right. I'm new, free to play, and I copy decks, replace missing cards, try new combinations. Yeah, and that's fine too. That's totally reasonable. Like if you're building on a budget, you build it as close as you can, fill the cards in as you get the wild cards or as you open them up in packs or whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with using the content that way either. You know, only thing we're talking about is just people who want more strategy stuff, but just don't watch more strategy stuff. I mean, you know what? I'll probably post that to Twitter later and just ask people like, if I did this, how many you would watch? And I think a bunch of people would say it, and I guarantee you if I do the first video, it's going to get half as many views. Probably not half, probably like 70% as many views as anything else I do. Historically, that's been the case. And I had people specifically said like, well, I want stuff about how to build a deck, how to sideboard, how to do this. And I literally made those videos. They did not do well. They totally didn't do well. And City says, I watch because you're very informative. You know, and I try to be. That's one of the things I brand my content on. That's why I have the why series of videos, so I can explain things to people. You know, so we do the hidden gems series, right? So you can find out about cards in your collection that are worth money that you didn't even know about, right? Like stuff like that, I think is important to the brand of what I'm trying to do. Other than just gameplay, it's like, hey, I have this other knowledge in gaming and in Magic that I just want to share with people to help make your whole gaming experience better, not just playing Magic, right? Like if there's other things I can add to your Magic experience, I'd like to do that. Is it better to pick one deck and just play that on rank? Historically, I would say this. It depends on the situation and your resources available, whatever. But generally, I would say it's better to stick with the deck for at least some reasonable period of time. Now, first off, I think the first thing would have to be, is that deck even quality, right? Because there's sometimes, you know, I even try some decks that aren't great. And y'all never see those on videos because they're terrible. So the first thing is like figuring out, is this deck even viable, right? If it is, or it's a popular deck and you know it's good or whatever, it's probably safe. And then the next thing is playing it for at least a few weeks. For two reasons. One is you give yourself time to build up more resources to eventually be able to apply to whatever that next deck is. You know, you're accumulating gold every day, you're getting a few free packs. If you bought the Mastery Pass, you're really getting a lot of stuff out of it, whatever. And those are things that can be applied to future decks. The other is you stand to make fewer mistakes if you're playing a deck more often, because whether you realize it or not, assuming you're learning and you're trying and you're not just going through the motions, like you're picking up subconsciously things that you're doing against certain cards, right? It's just like real life. There's some things you naturally get better at because you're just doing them in repetition and you get more efficient at it, right? Your games will get faster, so you're going to be able to get more games in. You're going to know how to defend against certain cards that you got wrecked by before or whatever, right? That comes with just playing more games. And I think the worst part for some people is they try to change decks multiple times a week. Like they'll get on a hot streak and they're like, oh, this deck is the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? And they'll be like 10-0 or 12-1 or whatever. And then the RNG, you know, finally catches up with them. And then they go, I don't know, let's say 5-5 their next outing. They're like, oh, the metagame must have changed, or everybody's targeting my deck. I need a new deck. It's like, no, that's not what's happening. It's just people caught up and you didn't make changes to the deck as you went along, and the numbers just balanced out. Like, that happens. Remember that the best players in the world in Magic only have like a 63% lifetime win percentage. That means they're losing over 30% of their games. Like, that's real. That's just percentages of games that have some randomness to them. Or playing against other quality decks and quality players. Like, that's going to happen. So I even know, and I tell people when I post things that like, this deck went nearly undefeated, or it's, you know, the Jund deck went 15-3 or whatever. I know in reality, realistically, no deck is really better than like a 60% deck if you're going against quality players and quality decks. At some point, you have to be able to outplay your opponents. How do you get to outplay your opponents? Through experience. You just learn to play better and play that particular deck better. That's really it. I mean, I wish there was more to it, but I would not recommend changing decks every single day. Hell, no, I wouldn't even recommend doing it like twice a week. You should probably find a deck and play it for at least a week. And let's say you get 6 to 8 games in a day. By the end of the week, you've gotten, what do we call that, 50 games in? That's probably a good run to understand the deck better or not. And you probably have a real sample size on, have you started winning more with the deck or less with it or whatever, and you can kind of tell. And if it's worth it to switch at that point or not. But for me, less than a week doesn't even really make sense. Now, for me, obviously I'm making content or whatever, so I change up decks. But I've told people before, like if I were going to play, I'd probably, if I'm playing for myself, I'd probably take one of the ones that was just an overperformer and that I enjoyed playing. Because that's the biggest thing. If you enjoy playing it, go for it. Like, if you don't enjoy playing it, you're just going to be miserable trying to get wins. I don't really understand the purpose of grinding to get wins, especially when you're playing for virtually free on Arena and no entry fee. Like, why play something that's good, but you just hate playing it and you're bored just to get to Mythic and be like, I got to Mythic. All right, so you got one extra booster pack for hours of boredom. Hell, disdain in some cases. Like, it's a really weird mentality. Aaron says, my LGS mainly does F&M limited because the try hard you talked about earlier. I could see that. I could totally see that. Plus, some stores, they try to move more booster packs, try to make more sales, and it makes sense to do that with limited. Nothing wrong with that. There's also the belief by a lot of players, depending on who your most vocal players are within a player pool, that draft and sealed are the most fair formats because everybody starts on equal footing or whatever. But the reality is that's not true. For two reasons. One, some people are just going to get lucky, right? The odds of getting lucky are way more important because you might just open the powerful rare mythics in the set or get multiples in the same color that allow you to have a more powerful deck or whatever, right? There's a bunch of things that can happen. The other is players with more experience just are going to draft better. They understand how cards work better. They understand combinations of things. They understand the concepts of the set that new players just don't. I tell players all the time, like, your best bet as a new player, assuming you understand the rules well enough to play a competitive game, is just to copy a deck list that has a style that you enjoy, build that, and go play an event. Because you at least are doing something where your odds are already at least reasonably decent because you're playing a real deck. Right? You can't, you could if you mess with it too much, but realistically, if you just take the list as it is, you're playing something that at least has reasonable odds of doing well. I think that's the biggest thing. Whereas if you go into a draft, I've watched people show up to draft and sealed stuff and just go 0-4, 1-3, whatever, like 10 times in a row because they're not getting any better at the game. They're just opening cards and randomly picking things or putting stuff together, not knowing what all their flaws are. So not saying it's bad. It's still worth it to do and you still walk away with cards and that's a benefit to people. But if the goal is to be on an even playing field, I actually don't think that limited play is the way to go. Simi says, I would like to more about mana curve, but I don't know where to start. And I used to do percentage base on spells, colors I had more of. Sounds like you're talking about two different things. Mana curve is basically the number of cards you have at each mana cost in the deck, more at the lower end and less at the higher end, so you don't get stuck with as many cards you can't cast throughout the game. However, I do think mana curve is overstated a lot of times, because depending on how the decks are built, you can have decks that have a bunch of 4, 5, 6 mana things if you're like drawing cards, making mana, blah, blah, doing other things that make it okay to play those cards later. Example, the Jund deck I put up today has a fair amount of 4+ cards, and people are like, this deck's so top heavy. It's like, well, yeah, but we're playing Deadly Dispute, Shambling Ghast, Kalane, Innkeeper, whatever, to justify that, right? Like, the deck's designed that way purposely, so your mana curve's going to look a little bit weird. As far as like color specific stuff, yes, you should be basing the colors you have available on your mana based on the colors in the decks. And that Arena basically does that work for you if you're ever not sure. Speaking of, let's go fire that up real quick and we'll take a look. We're kind of going all over the place with the stream today, but this has become like a strategy stream, so here we are. Feel free to ask your questions. I will try to answer them as best I can. While we're getting to that, let's see. Insidious says, been playing your Boros artifact deck after fully watching the video. Super fun. And you know what, Insidious? That is a good example of why watching a video is important, right? Because even when I played that deck, I didn't think it was going to be that good. But through watching the deck, you can learn a lot of small plays and ways to take risk and not, and what's important to the deck or whatever, as you watch that video. So when you go and play it, I guarantee you, if you don't, there's going to be decisions that you're going to make that I already made in the video, and you can know the odds of them working out or not better, or what makes a better play over another thing, right? I think sometimes people forget that, and I think that's a good reason to watch those videos, because that deck's a good example of that. But yeah, okay, so let me hop in here. Let me just grab one. Let me grab the Jund deck, since this is one we just put up. I have a ton of decks in here, by the way, that I'm going to be working on later. But going in here and looking at these stats, like, this is a good example, right? Where we're talking about the mana curve being weird. It's like, well, how many things do we have at different costs? We've got 9 at 1, we've got 12 at 2, 4 at 3, and then 6 at 4 and 5. A lot of times, if you have what they call the perfect mana curve or something, usually for like mono red aggro decks, right? You'll have the most at 1 and 2. So you'll see this curve kind of slide down a bit is what you want more often than not, right? You want it to be high at 1 and kind of come down because you want to be using all your mana, killing things, doing stuff, whatever. But the decks are completely different, right? When you're playing mono red, you might have, at least in current mono red, you have some number of the 1 mana like goblins. You're probably playing Play with Fire, Frostbite, Rabid Battery, whatever. But that's already like, what, 16 cards or whatever, right? At 1 mana. And then you have like a couple of things at 2 and a couple of things at 3, and then maybe like one big finisher or something. Maybe now like a Raiju or something at 4, right? So it really depends on how the decks are built, right? They look very different. Because like I said, this is doing something completely different. We're using those cheap early cards to sustain these higher cost cards. And these are also higher impact cards too, where you're talking about dragons and chariots and planeswalkers and whatever, right? Like these are high impact, like when they hit, they're going to do something for us. So that also makes a difference. Now, the reason I brought this up though, hey, welcome to the Hatchling. Just decided to follow. Well, I'm so appreciative of that. Thank you so much. I should probably be using my main YouTube page. So when that comes up, we get to see the cool little dragon things. I was on the wrong one. I apologize for that. What are we asking there? The channel is, what does that mean? Oh, I see. You got the little dragon print. Well, thank you so much for that. The way your name was, I thought you were asking a question. So when we're talking about like your lands, what should your lands look like? And you're looking at, okay, this basically in Arena shows you the mana pips you have in the deck and what you're trying to cast, right? So here we need the almost even, right? You're talking about 15, 16, 12. So they're not drastically different. But you do need more red than black and definitely more red than green. But when we go back and look at the deck list, you also have to take into consideration how that works out, right? Because we do have Blood Chief's Thirst, Shambling Ghast that we may want to be playing early. The way I've built this deck, I don't necessarily need to play Rabid Battery early. Matter of fact, a lot of times we don't even really want Rabid Battery till turn like 3, 4, 5, right? It's kind of protects us so we have another creature after a sweeper. It can give haste to something like a chariot, stuff like that. So it's not necessarily the card we need to have. So I'm not worried about hitting red on 1, but I want to make sure I have double red on like 5 or 6 because we have Goldspan dragons, right? So that's something you kind of have to think about when you're choosing your land count. And here, I want, honestly, enough black that I can hit black mana on turn 1, so I can either play Shambling Ghast or set up a Kalane. Maybe I get whatever is Haunted Ridge or whatever, right? That I can put into play tapped. And then I have the choice of either playing Kalane or Innkeeper on 2, potentially. So if you go in here to look, and we're counting, let's say, black sources, I've got 2, 6, 9, 13, 15 black sources. I've got 1, 5, 8, 12, 14 red sources. And then I've got 1, 5, 9, 11, and then another 6, so 17 potential green sources. And it's like, well, we needed less green than whatever. It's like, yeah, but our green comes attached to all the black and red. So it increases the odds that we will have the black or red most of the time. We also have more of those basics because it makes the most sense. If I'm going to have a basic, I would rather it be black than I would it be red or green. Though I did include one of each, so if somebody hits our land with a thing that lets us go search for a basic or whatever, right? We at least have one we can go get. But yeah, so it's not really a black and white thing, but I would say if you're going to look at that, at least start with, okay, these numbers here, these do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And if you look at these, you can at least get your mana at least in that percentage. So the worst thing you can do is at least go add up the ability of each land to produce each color and get it at least close to these percentages. And you can just do that on your own. Really easy to do. Just, number of lands you're playing, how many of them produce red, take that number divided by the number of your total lands. You should be within a percentage point of 2 of this number. If you are, you're probably going to be pretty close to what you need to cast the cards in your deck. Generally speaking. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, but that's probably where I would start if you weren't sure. So whatever we said, we had, 16 or what it was, 14 lands. So you divide that by the fact we're playing 24 lands, and that gets you pretty close. We're going to be greater than 40%. All right, cool. We should be able to cast our red cards. Same thing on the black cards, same thing on the green cards. Now, that's all hard to figure out when you get technical because you do have pathways that you have to choose one or the other, but you're doing the best you can, Chris says, 3-color decks are so hard without all the good dual lands. Tap lands just grind your deck to a halt. I don't think it's actually that bad, honestly. We have several decks that play 3 colors. The trick is just building your deck with that in mind. And if you look at this build, a lot of these, like this only needs one. Like if we get one of each color on board, that's going to do 90% of what we need. Except for in the case of Goldspan Dragon. However, we're also offsetting that because Shambling Gas, Deadly Dispute, Innkeeper, Kalain, they all also make treasure. So that also smooths out our mana. So it's not as difficult as you think. We have a bunch of things in Magic right now that make treasure. We have a bunch of things, a bunch of different color lands right now that allow stuff. Now, the biggest thing is deciding how many of these slow lands you can afford to play. Because it's very easy to say like, oh, I already have 4 of each of these. Let me just shove 4 of each in the deck. The problem is then you have 12 lands, which is going to be half or more of the lands you're playing in most cases, that are going to come into play tap on turn 1 and 2. Like, that's probably not what you want if you're playing an aggro deck. Now, if you're playing a slower deck, like let's say you're playing, just making something up, let's say Esper Control with a bunch of Planeswalkers or something, right? Like, you almost don't care because your key turns are going to be turn 3, 4, 5, right? So you're willing to take that chance that your lands are going to come into play tap. If you're playing something like this, where you need to get those early plays down and generate that treasure, if you notice, I'm playing 3-2-2, and that's it. Because I don't want a bunch of lands coming to play tapped. Now, sometimes you'll get one, and like your hand only has like Kalain or Innkeeper, plus some of this other stuff. And it's like, all right, I'll play 1 tap turn 1, and it's not a big deal. But you kind of have to understand what your deck's trying to do on how many of those you can play. So what does mana curve actually do then? The mana curve, like I was saying, it's about the... Back over here, let me go back to the screen, right? It's about this. It's about your cost between 1 through whatever, right? And it's about giving you the ability to play the most cards efficiently every turn. So you're getting stuck with fewer cards in hand that you can't cast. Because again, if you're top heavy with a bunch of 4, 5, 6 mana things, and you get through your first 3 turns, you may have a lot of hands you have to mulligan because you're not going to cast anything. If you have more cheap things, it also allows you to play multiple things in a turn, which could be important. Because again, if you're playing something like mono red aggro, it's trying to get up under your opponent as fast as possible. So you want to be able to play the most cards efficiently and deal the most damage, right? So you're trying to do it on the cheap. So you can get a creature down and attack and maybe still play that frostbite or play with fire and kill something, right? So I play a creature on 1, I play a creature on 2, boom, I can kill your creature, attack. Next turn, I can maybe play another 1 or 2 mana thing and have some mana up and kill a thing, right? So it's really about that efficiency and keeping moving forward and being able to do more than your opponent can and not getting stuck with a lot of plays. Because again, if you're playing mono red aggro, but your deck's full of, I don't know, let's say 3, 4, 5 mana things, which right now could be Reckless Stormseeker, Raiju's, Goldspan Dragons, whatever. There's like real cards you could play, right? If you go too heavy on those, now your deck's got 16, 18 of those things that cost more. Well, you might play a creature on 1, nothing on 2, maybe something on 3, but now you're stuck because do I play a creature or do I get to kill a thing? And if I have to kill a thing, well, now I'm only attacking for 1, most likely, possibly 2, and my opponent's still got a lot more life than I want them to have on turn 3 playing that style of deck. Right, so it really depends on the deck and what you're trying to do. If you're playing a, like we said earlier, an Esper control deck, you don't care about mana curve as much. Like those decks will often have a lot of things that cost 3, 4, 5 mana. Because early on, they're playing maybe something that foretells, maybe a Fading Hope. They get to 3, they're casting like Celestis, so they have 5 mana going into the next turn. Maybe they're playing a board sweeper, whether that's Meat Hook, Doomscar, whatever on the turn. And so they're planning on being at like 10 life, wiping your board, and then trying to make a comeback, right? That's how those decks are built. So they're not trying to do a bunch of stuff in the early turns. Matter of fact, if they're doing a lot of stuff in the early turns, it's probably not great for them, right? Because it's not working with the plan of what the deck's trying to do. So the curve of those decks is going to look way different because they're not worried about having all those cheap cards. That's not their strategy. So, like I said, it's not about what colors or anything. The mana curve is totally about cost. And when people look at decks, like I said, it's easy for them to get caught up of like, well, you know, and like I said, I saw a comment today on my YouTube video where people said, well, this deck's too top heavy and it's got 12 things at 4. And I get how some people might look at that and think that. But we took that into consideration when building the deck, and we have a bunch of stuff that makes treasures, particularly to sustain that reason. Yeah, that's another good example, right? The ramp decks don't really care either. They have a bunch of stuff at 2 and 3 to go find lands, put lands into play, whatever, and then a bunch of stuff at 5, 6, 7, right? Because their goal is play things that get more land into play so that turn 4, I've got 7 mana or whatever, and I can do the big ridiculous thing. So they actually want to have a big thing that costs 6 or 7 early. So they're going out of their way to play things that just go find stuff, and there's almost nothing in the middle a lot of times. You know, right now, maybe the 3-4 guy that goes and gets a land and puts it into play, right? But generally, they won't have a lot in that 3 and 4 gap a lot of times. They're going 1s and 2s and, 5+. That's how their decks are built. So yeah, completely different types of decks for sure. Need to say I love your videos on Spirit Sisters. Yeah, that was a wild deck. The only downside to that deck is you have to enjoy grindy type Magic, where you're going to be playing incremental value over 10 turns or 12 turns or whatever. Like, you have to be into that type of Magic, or you're not going to enjoy that deck. Which, it's a fine deck. It was fun. I might make a few changes to it here or there, but it did what we wanted it to do. It's just one of those ones that it's a completely different type of Magic. Some people are into that, some people aren't. I don't know if I would play it if I was trying to like grind my way up the ladder. But, if I was already at like Diamond or Mythic, yeah, I'd probably play it a little bit there because, the grind isn't as long from those points. And if you're at Mythic, you're already got where you're going to get, you know what I mean? So it makes more sense. If I was trying to grind up from Gold or Platinum, I probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? Just because it's so slow. If you only have 2 hours to kill on Arena that night, you're probably only going to get in like, I don't know, 6 games, 7 games. That's not necessarily something because we had several games I played that took 15, 20 minutes with that deck. So, you'll have some that are faster, but generally not necessarily one I would recommend for ladder grinding unless you just like that type of Magic. But yeah, any other questions while we're at it? Hopefully I explained the 2 issues there with mana and mana curve pretty well. Was that too confusing for anybody? I'm always curious because sometimes, because the biggest thing as an instructor or a communicator is that it does you no good to share a bunch of information if people on the other side can't consume it. You know what I mean? And I've been in situations like that where I've been to see a speaker that they're using 50 million technical terms and talking about all the stuff historically that I know nothing about or whatever. And I walk out going like, I feel like that was very informative, but I only really got like 10% of it, so I have to do a bunch of follow-up. So my goal is always try to communicate in a way that the most people can consume the information. Cannot deny that the card is very interesting. Oh, definitely. And I'll probably have another deck or 2 with it in there. I think I have at least one other list where it's in there anyway. It's not necessarily the focal point of the deck. It just happens to work with the deck, so I included one. So you'll probably see that sometime in the next 2 weeks, maybe. Simeon says, thanks for your explanation. Also, do you feel as though control decks are too powerful? No, not really. I think there's a fine balance right now. We started out the stream talking about that. I mean, there's a couple of cards I don't like right now. You know, if you're talking about like Farewell or Meat Hook Massacre, but it's mostly just because of what they're capable of doing at their cost versus what they actually do. But even then, I mean, you've seen our videos. Like we beat those decks a lot of times. They're definitely beatable. I think the thing is though, what's tough for inexperienced players is they try to play every game of Magic the same way, right? You know, try to just run all your creatures out or kill everything your opponent plays. And it's like, that doesn't work all the time, right? If I'm playing against slower, like a mid-rangey deck or whatever, okay, maybe killing their threats as they play them works because they're not playing a lot on each turn. Or I'm not worried about the little junk they have out early. Let me just save it for the big things or whatever, right? Like you kind of have to understand what you're playing against. Also, like the strategy of how I'm playing an aggro deck versus an aggro deck is going to be completely different. And you like if you watch my videos, I'll clearly be stating, okay, the reason I'm not doing this is the opponent might have XYZ. So we want to do this instead. So if they do have this, I want to say it happened yesterday in yesterday's video where there was a situation with the tempo deck, right? Where I'm like, okay, well, let me play this because if they do wipe the board, I'll still have these two plays next turn so I can rebuild the board and still be able to protect my stuff. Versus if I play this one card, I now have only one mana available. Though it would be lethal, I make myself susceptible to way more cards and potentially lose, right? So you have to figure out that balance of how to play against certain things. And I think that's the biggest issue, where people will look at some decks and just say like, oh, these are too powerful because the way I play, I can never beat them. And it's like, well, okay, maybe adjust how you're playing. Because, and I always tell people, if you watch other people play and they're playing similar decks to you and they're having success in the matchups where you struggle, try to analyze what they're doing. I always tell people, don't just watch the games for a win or a loss. I mean, it is entertainment, don't get me wrong. But if you're considering playing that deck or that style of deck that's being showcased in the video, look at what's working and what's not. Understand when the creator's saying, like, this is why I'm taking an action. Like, absorb that and understand, like, there's a reason for each play and each action and what's getting them the success. It's not, I mean, yeah, there's some luck involved or whatever, but it's not as much as you would think. Let's see. Juan says the idea about mana was clear. The mana curve depends on the deck you're building. Correct. And Cydia says, how do you feel about making videos on goofy decks that abuse weird interactions? Until you have a giant number of followers, number of views, it actually is very bad for you to do that because people won't watch it. They're not really interested in it unless the card's already super hot or like I have a deck coming up that I'm going to play Mech Titan Core. And I know some people want to just see that in action. But if even in the video, if I can't make the deck make the 10-10 more than once, nobody's going to give a damn about the video or the deck. So, you know, generally speaking, though, people don't watch that stuff. Like people, see you later, Chris. Like, again, people are looking for deck lists and they want decks that win. As much as, honestly, I think people could learn more from seeing decks that don't work or seeing the process of, hey, I built this deck, we're trying it, we're going to try to make it work, couldn't make it work, oh well. You know, that should be a more informative video because now when you go and try to build a deck or you want to add those cards to another deck, you already know, does it work or not, what situations it's bad in, you know, whatever. But people don't want to consume that. I mean, I think it would be very good content and probably even be entertaining if done correctly, but that's just not what people want to watch. Now, if you already have a huge following and getting a lot of views, you can turn that into a thing. You know, like, I don't think I'm throwing anybody under the bus here, but like MTG Jeff, he's had a whole week before where he just plays in the play queue. If I literally play a game in a video in the play queue just to like test it before I go take it in the ladder, because a couple of times I'm like, let me just show this test game as well. I literally get people going like, I don't know why you waste games not playing on the ladder. Well, that's not proving anything. That win doesn't even count or whatever, right? Literally. Like I end up having to delete or block a bunch of people because, you know, they want to harass over one game. One game, not even a whole video. I have like 7 games in the video. The one I play in the play queue, they want to talk crap about, right? So it's like, you get those people. Or somebody like Seth over at MTG Goldfish, right? Saffron Olive. He actually does a whole series on, you know, let's build a jank deck. I forgot what he calls it. But basically, let's build a bad deck and see if we can make it win. right? Or build it around a bad card. But those channels already have a huge number of followers and a huge number of views, no matter what they do. So people are at least going to click on it and watch some portion of the video, no matter what. We don't have that reach yet, so I can't necessarily do that. That's why you don't see as many small to mid-sized creators doing it, because it's just bad for business, sadly. I mean, I think it would be good content. I think it would be great to do. I've considered doing that, but for me, I just show that stuff sometime on streams where, like, let's just try a deck or let's just try a card and see what happens. And I'll just stream it, and then I don't even turn it into a YouTube video. Like, it sucks. A bunch of people, my regular followers, don't get to see the stuff, but like I said, it just makes bad business sense, so I just don't show it. What else is there? Thanks for all the great content. Well, thank you so much. Cool. Any other questions? I feel like we've been knocking them out of the park today, man. This has actually been really good. I'm excited about the transitions we got, the little video packages, and we actually answered a bunch of questions and helped people out today. This feels like this was a very positive, very good stream. This is what we need more of in our lives. For sure. This is actually really, really good stuff. Oh, man. All right, where are we at here? Man, we've already been going for an hour and a half. Doesn't even feel like it. Is Witherbloom combo good in this one? I don't even know what that is. What is Witherbloom combo? One, what makes it combo is the biggest issue. I can't answer the question without knowing what it is. I mean, because it might be. I don't know. I would have to know what it's trying to do or what the cards are. Or what the key cards are. I don't need the whole deck list. I mean, are you just talking about, like, as a two-color combination of playing Golgari colors, just green and black? Because if so, like, yeah, that's fine. You can probably build a deck with that and do okay. I don't have any qualms about that. I think I have one that I'll probably be playing over the next couple days. Like, but I don't know if I would call it combo. It just uses green and black cards. Like, if there's... I mean, generally speaking, I would say combos tend to be weaker than just pushing a strategy. Pest, sacrifice, drain, opponent. Yeah, see, I wouldn't call that a combo. That's just what the deck does. A combo is usually like trying to get some, like searching or drawing cards to get to some combination of 2 or 3 cards that work together to do a big specific thing that if you get those, you probably win the game. You know, the pest sacrifice stuff, I would say, is just like a thing. As far as a deck, like, it's fine. The problem is there's just probably just better things you could be doing. I think that's the issue. It's like you spend a lot of resources to, like, okay, I got to make these tokens, and then I also have to try to protect, like, Sedgemoor Witch, and, you know, like, and the way I beat those decks a lot of the times is just like, okay, you get your tokens, but I just get rid of the other cards. Right? Like, I literally just ignore that you have the tokens. And, like, sure, you get to draw a lot of cards and you do stuff, but, like, if you kill the Sedgemoor Witch, or you kill the Meathook Massacre, or whatever, those decks just don't do a lot. And that's the problem right now, is that they can win, don't get me wrong, but you're spending a lot of cards that need other things in play to do stuff. And if those pieces aren't in play, you just have worse creatures a lot of the time, right? Like your cards are all going to be worse than what, like, the mono green deck is doing, right? The mono white decks are going to be more efficient than you. The mid-rangey decks are going to have all the removal, right? So you're kind of limited on where you fit in the meta. Like, can you steal a win or two here or there? Absolutely. But is it going to consistently get you a bunch of wins? Probably not. And I've even tried some recently just testing stuff, and they were not great. But, you know, I was also going, okay, well, let's play the big, what is it, the 11-10 creature that when it dies, we get extra tokens, and, you know, trying different stuff. And it's just like, it's a lot of work to not necessarily get the best things, because you also have a lot of cards that aren't necessarily killing things right now, right? You have a lot of stuff that's exiling. And that's the other issue. So even trying to play those big creatures that could give you somewhat of an advantage and give you a way to sacrifice tokens and whatever, doesn't really work. Because you've got Brutal Cathars, You've got Rite of Oblivion, you know, like the people. Actually, I've even seen people going to playing the what is it, the Baleful Mastery? Like that's a thing people are playing now. So it's like, yeah, all these things that are just taking away options as a whole. And don't be wrong, I think Sedgemoor Witch is a good card. Totally, I think it's totally a good card. But hey, thanks for coming on board, there, people. Thanks for becoming a member. Oh, X-Medica, I thought you already were a member. Father Bean, well, thank you so much for that. I'll have to make sure I get you added to the end credits on the next one. But yeah, so can it work? Yes. Would I recommend doing it? Man, another member. Thank you so much, Daniel Sibley. Thanks for coming on board. Yeah, like I said, I think it's possible. I just don't know if it's good, especially right now, because Black Green, you could do so many powerful mid-rangey things with like Chariots, Ridden 7, Binding of the Old Gods, Festival, right? There's all these other cool cards you can play with right now that are just more powerful and doing bigger things. Because that's the other problem, right? Like the Pest decks feel really good when they get to do the thing they're doing, right? Like you get the Sedgemoor Witch out, you're Plumb the Forbidden for a bunch of copies, you make a bunch of tokens, you play like a Meat Hook Massacre, right? You have something to sack your tokens to, and like everything's awesome. However, when you don't do that, you feel like you're just on the back foot the whole game. You know what I mean? And I've seen that from my opponents. We're like, okay, well, I'll play this thing where I make a token and I go get a lesson. All right, cool. I'm going to play this other creature, hope I can block something for a turn or whatever. You know what I mean? And I just don't think as a whole it does enough. Like I said, it feels like if you're backtracking, rarely do you come out of the hole. Right? And if I'm, especially in this day and age, if I'm playing an aggro deck, I want some way to come out of the hole. Like if you notice, we had a couple of wins with the Jund deck where it's like, all right, we got him low enough. Can I top deck a dragon or a Reckless Stormseeker or whatever, right? Or something to give haste to this thing I'm about to play or whatever. Those are the things I like. Like even the mono white deck can at least draw like Elite Spellbinders. Like, okay, cool. This is going to be 3 or 4 damage in the air next turn. Can you deal with it? You know, I don't think you necessarily have that with the Pest Summoning decks, right? You've got, yeah, really no breakthrough creature. I was trying to name one. I'm like, I don't know. You have Eye Twitch maybe? Like that's not the most threatening card. So you don't have that comeback mechanic unless you're in a situation where you've already made a bunch of tokens, your opponent is low enough life, and you play a Meat Hook Massacre and you can drain them for some amount of life, right? That's like the best thing you can hope to do. Hey, James, how's it going? Yeah, Rin and 7's actually a pretty sweet card. I will say this, though. I don't think it's as powerful as it was because we have more people trying to play Rite of Oblivion, Baleful Mastery, and Spell Pierce that just got printed in the last set, right? So I think those 3 things make it not quite as good. So if you notice, I'm only playing like 1 or 2 in a lot of decks now instead of where I used to play 3, sometimes even 4 I would consider it. But now I'm just at like 2 or 3 because I'm like, I'm probably going to need to be spending mana or something else. Or I'm going to slow roll playing it to make sure I can play around Spell Pierce sometimes. So it's a little weird, you know. But it's just times change, you know, on cards, depending on what's printed and what the meta looks like. So all those things kind of figure into that. But Rin and 7 is still a very good card. Obviously, I had it in the deck I played today. So not going to talk you out of playing it. I'm just saying you don't necessarily need 4, is what I'm saying. So if you don't own them, crafting 1 or 2 is probably fine. I don't know if you need to go straight up to 4, unless it's a key part of the deck. Like you're trying to get stuff into the graveyard, and you have stuff with flashback or whatever. Like then it makes sense to go ahead and have like a 3rd one or a 4th one, because it's gonna aid your deck in doing what it's trying to do. If it's just like a cool bonus card that's a little hard for your opponent to deal with, then go ahead and just make like 2 of them and you're probably okay. Whew, boy. All right. Well, trying to decide what we want to do from here, because we answered a lot of questions. This has been a very, very good stream. Boy. Yeah, speaking of, I was just thinking Golgari decks, because somebody mentioned that. Green-black. Or Witherbloom, if you will, if you're newer. This is another one I'm kind of toying around with. It's green and black. It's a bunch of enchantments. using Kami of Transience, some of the sagas, Tatsunari, so we can play a bunch of enchantments, keep making frogs and draining the opponent. Skeletal Swarming, because it happens to be an enchantment, and it's stuff we can sacrifice to Dockside, so maybe this is a thing. I have no idea if it is, but I mean, I would rather be trying to do something like this instead of the pest decks, because this at least has some long-term comeback mechanics, right? We got some ways we can draw cards. We can play stuff off the top with Ranger class. Kami of Transience will come back a lot because we have a bunch of enchantments, right? This can give us a way to drain our opponents in addition to Meat Hook Massacre. Right, there's just like a lot of things going on here. And you get this, that becomes a dragon that can come over the top and fly. Kami of Transience can trample past stuff. We have Binding of the Old Gods that can actually be a quality removal thing. Shingeki can actually get stuff back. So after this goes to the graveyard, we can reuse a binding even if we need to. Right, so there's a lot of like little interactions here that I think make this potentially stronger than the other deck. But again, I haven't played it yet. It could be complete garbage. But on premise, it's a thing we can do. I also want to mess around with the Sultai Super Friends list a little bit more. We goofed around with this a little bit the other day, but I like some of the interactions that this deck's capable of. So I want to try this out. Something else I definitely want to try. Man, we just have a lot of stuff right now that I haven't even gotten to. Just like I have an Orzhov Tokens deck that's pretty sweet. Esper Control with a bunch of Planeswalkers. Reanimator decks. I haven't even got around to playing those at all yet this season, and those tend to draw well for views, so I'm probably going to try to knock one of those out later today. But yeah, there's a ton of things right now that we can do. Like, and this is why I'm saying, like, right now, I don't have no Gloomstreaker. Gloomstreaker's fine, but I just didn't have room for it. I think it's a fine card. I've tried it in other lists. More often than not, though, like, I feel like I'm often getting a card back and then just getting a chump blocker. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but I kind of want to see, like, can I just do more stuff with other cards? Granted, it is an enchantment, which is awesome and it still counts. So it's not to say I won't eventually end up with it back in the deck, but I at least want to try it without it first. Because I've even been watching other people build various enchantment decks that do play Gloomstreaker, and it hasn't been super impactful. I do feel like there's a couple of times throughout a game where you will feel good getting to use it throughout a video, possibly. But I don't know if, like, on a per-game basis, it's that big of a thing. Especially since, like, your Kami's already come back. You have Shigeki that can get stuff back, right? So you have also other ways that are doing the same thing. So I don't really know. Can't wait to have a collection like this. Man, this is literally just, like, culminations of, like, set to set. Like, and it's easier to do this when we're on, like, the second, third, fourth set of that standard, because a big chunk of the decks are cards that already exist. So some of these are just updated lists with like 4 new cards in them or something, right? Or one new card but like 4 copies. And that's the only thing that makes some of this even viable. But there's other stuff here too. Like we have some artifact lists, like a Temur, vehicles that I want to goof around with. So there's still a lot of things that we haven't seen yet on the channel that I don't know how interested people are going to be in some of these lists. We're just going to try them, because that's all you can do sometimes. PR just hops in and says, yo, well, yo to you too. I shared that over on social media the other day because there was somebody who had a thing on TikTok of like, what's a word or phrase that, depending on how you say it, can have 2 different meanings? And that yo was actually my thing, because there's sometimes you can be like, yo, and be like, and then other times just like, yo, like, and it's really good, right? So when somebody says yo, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like on the internet, there's no inflection. So I'm just like, is that good or bad? So when you come in and it's the first thing you say, I take it as a positive that you're greeting to just say, hey. But yeah, quick check with the chat. What type of deck would you like to see featured, let's say in the next 2 weeks on the channel? Ignore what I have on screen, because I can literally build a ton of stuff. Like, what type of deck would you want to see featured that you haven't seen either from me or from anybody else? Because because there's a bunch of options. This one was good. Well, thanks for stopping by. Am I going to release an updated Burrow Square? Sam, I can't promise you anything gets updated. I tell people a rule generally is you either get updates or you get new decks. Like, if you want to keep getting new decks, most stuff's never going to get updated. That's kind of how it works. So you get a thing, I put it out into the world, I give you at the end of the video how I feel about it, what cards I might change or whatever, and then I leave you on your own. When we get to the end of the season, if I feel like I've exhausted most of the quality options, or there's something that there's a major change in the metagame that I think makes something particularly better or worse, I might revisit it and you get one. But generally speaking, you might get like, I don't know. I don't even know if we've ever done more than like 4 updates to decks in a season. Usually it's like, it's for sure 5 or less each season where we're just like, okay, here's the thing. Feel free, if you play this deck, here's an update. Or sometimes when the season resets, I'll come back and revisit a deck. So I'm like, well, I played this at Mythic, a bunch of weird decks. Is this something somebody could still play at the lower ranks when people are still in the try-hard mode or whatever? Right, I've done that a few times. Definitely Super Friends. Yep, that's fun. Reanimator makes sense. Definitely have a couple of those in the works already. Been trying to see a Junji deck in forever. Today's deck, I would say if you want to, the Jun deck we put up, feel free to replace Rin and 7 with Junji. I think I mentioned that in the video, and you're good. That's probably the only place I'd play it right now. It's a fine card. It's just, because it can't get dragons back, and some of your best top-end cards are dragons, it does limit what you can do with it. But being able to play Junji and get back a Halan and Elena, still kind of powerful. Or if you just need to drain your opponent for a couple points of life. Rogue Class Thief the opponent's cards. I probably won't be building a Rogue Class deck. Rogue Class is not a good Magic card. Sorry, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's one that, like, I goofed around with it for a while. It's just not worth the effort. Like, the problem, more often than not, same reason I think you're not seeing as many, like, what is it, Soul Siphon, I think is the black card. Because, like, a lot of times you're playing the card, and then you're getting something that, like, sure, you can play it, but it works better for the opponent's deck than yours. Right? Like, if I'm playing, let's say, against a mill deck, do I care that I'm getting their cards? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I got a mill card. I can mill you for 8. You know what I mean? It doesn't do anything. Like, maybe if I'm lucky, you're playing some control deck and I can get, like, your Loth or something. But, do I just want to take your Doomscar or your, I don't know, Blood Chief's Thirst? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it, does your aggro deck that you're playing, because you have to be hitting your opponent to trigger the Rogue Class, like, do you care about what most of your opponents are doing? Not really. Like, against other aggro decks, it could be kind of cool, maybe. But then you also need them to not be blocking your things and be in a situation that you could prevent enough damage so you don't die while trying to play their cards that are less useful for you than for them. I think that's the problem. I think that's the issue. Now that I'm even talking through it, it's just like, you spend so much time trying to balance how to use their cards when they're just going to be less efficient for you, in most cases. So it becomes very matchup dependent. And right now, at least a third of the matchups, if not close to half, are just going to be some number of mid-rangey control whatever decks. And unless you hit like a Planeswalker or something, you're not going to want most of their cards. Like, maybe you find something that lets you draw a couple cards, like, but a lot of the stuff you're just not going to want. Boros equipment. Fair. I think the problem is, like, I think the Boros artifacts is just more efficient right now. So even if we do the Boros equipment and it works, it would have to be really good for me to recommend that over the Boros artifacts. Not saying it's not going to be playable and decent, but, and I still have an idea and a concept for how it can work. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but just kind of giving you a advance heads up there. You want to watch and learn how to do good with Super Friends. That's fair. I mean, really, to be honest, the term Super Friends is kind of overdone. I use it because it's a trendy term, but the reality is, it's just a control deck using some number of Planeswalkers. I mean, you're doing all the typical control decks things, right? Early removal, draw some cards, get some mana to set up your planeswalkers, protect your planeswalkers, hopefully win the game. All right, you know what I mean? Like, that's literally all a Super Friends deck is. Like, it sounds awesome, but it's really just some control deck where the main win condition is likely going to be planeswalkers. You never build them, too many wild cards. Yeah, and that's kind of the other thing too, Michael. Like, there's some number of players that are in the same boat where they just, even if you do build a fun deck that uses that many mythics or whatever, they're just not going to have enough to build the deck, right? So while it's interesting, they honestly get kind of discouraged because they're like, oh, my collection's not big enough. I can't do that either. I have an Ishin deck that does the Dungeon Venture thing. At least I have a list. I don't know if it's any good, but that's kind of like the only home I have for it, so I'm hoping maybe it's playable. We'll see in the next few days, but I'm kind of just hoping. I have a feeling it might not be great, but we're going to try it and find out. And again, I think that Samurai and Ninjas probably get a lot of cards, and a lot being 2 to 3 copies probably each in this upcoming Alchemy set in a couple of weeks. And that's probably it to make them playable. But I think without that, the Samurai for sure are lacking. Ninjas at least are playable. You know, like, they're not super, but they're at least reasonably playable. Samurai are pretty bad right now. However, I will say this. If somebody can come up with a Samurai deck, and by Samurai, I mean you're playing the main creature type in the deck is Samurai. You know, using, let's say, 16 to 18 Samurai in the deck. And it's good. I will give you $20 via PayPal. That is a standing agreement, I guess, if you will, that I have from my Twitch stream that I will extend to across the board. If you get one, hit me up on Discord, give me the list. And by good, I mean it just has to be like 50%. If I can play 20 games with it and we win 10, great, $20. And matter of fact, I have somebody else in my Twitch streams that said they would also pay 20. They would match my 20 because they really want a Samurai deck. So you could make up to $40. Like, I can't force their money to be guaranteed. Mine is guaranteed. But they seem like they're a person of their word. So you're probably going to get $40. But yeah, if you can do it. It's not, I don't think it's, and now admittedly, if it comes out with Alchemy and you get the other Samurai and it's playable, like, that's not really going to count. It's just like, as it stands, because I feel like if I could build a good Samurai deck, I think people would want to know about it. They'd want to see it. It'd be good for business, obviously, but the reality is they're just not good right now. Too many Samurais are really bad. Too many of them are really bad. But if you got one, I'll take a look at it. And, you know, you probably at least want to really put it through the paces. If you're just going to shove a deck list at me, know that I've already seen a lot of Samurai decks, and I'll probably just, like, reject them or be like, hey, I have a deck that looks like this. It's probably not that good. You know, and I won't even bother spending the time. So if you figure it out, there's money in it for you. I will gladly send you money via PayPal, $20. And like I said, I can get you another $20 from one of my viewers. So you got $40 coming. And I'll feature your deck in a YouTube video, which right now is a thing I only offered to members on our memberships. Which, by the way, if you hit the join button on this video, you can support the channel directly for as little as 99 cents. And I have 3 different levels that offer different things. As a matter of fact, I have a video I've been editing, but I think I'm actually going to just give the raw video to the middle tier plus viewers as members as well. The concept's counterintuitive to its color strategy. I think it's more, not even that. It's just that you're trying to go both wide and tall. That's how I describe it, being a problem, right? You're trying to go wide, so you have some number of triggers, and then you're trying to go tall, so the one thing you attack with is easy to protect in whatever. But the problem is, the things you're getting for that one attack aren't that big. Like, you could trigger twice if you have something that's cool to trigger, but, like, your best Samurai is the one you can sacrifice and protect the thing, and its trigger is just like, if a Samurai attacks alone, it gets lifelink. Well, okay, you got double lifelink. You still only gain life once, right? Ryu's cool because you can get like 3 attack steps if you have Ishin. That's pretty sweet. But then you have to have whatever you're attacking with, plus Ishin, plus Ryu, and hopefully have something else that triggers so you're getting some additional ability every time you attack. So that's a lot to set up. the other samurai are stuff like you can play an artifact from your graveyard. Like, okay. You know, like that's not exciting. And it's like a 4 mana 3/3 or something. Or like, you know, they're just not good. That's the problem. Like it's a lot of setup and you have a lot of cards that just don't do anything. Or if you get the wrong combinations on the board by themselves, it's like, okay, well, I have Ishin. But again, it's like, well, I'll give something double lifelink. You know, it's like, that's just not exciting. And I think that's the issue. Now, is there some combination of where you can play, like we're saying, the 16-ish samurai plus some like 6 to 8 other creatures that are warriors maybe and make it work? Possibly. I don't know what that would be because even the warriors we have right now don't do a lot. I mean, they're fine. There's a bunch of quality warriors, but they don't necessarily trigger when you attack, so I'm not sure what that would even be. I mean, if you want to get really campy, you can maybe do Ishin and what's that chick from Forgotten Realms that every time you attack you get to roll a d20 or something? Where's that? It's in red. It starts with a D. What's her? Yeah, Delina. Like, you could try doing something terrible like this, but I think it's still going to be super bad. I wouldn't do it, but that would be at least amusing. The concept, let's see, just dropped in to say, way to go. Well, thank you, Chad. Much appreciated. So yeah, like, I mean, there's campy things you can do, but I don't think any of them are good. I mean, I think that's kind of the problem. I wouldn't recommend that stuff to anybody. As far as samurai go. But like I said, if you got a good samurai list, hit me up on Discord, drop me a link. I will definitely check it out. And if it works, I would send you $20 because I would rather somebody else do the work for me because I do not want to spend any more time trying to build samurai decks that are not good. I've probably wasted a good 3-4 hours on that already, and they're terrible. They're spectacularly terrible. Actually, I say that. I won't say spectacularly terrible. I definitely have played stuff that's much worse than the samurai decks, but they're just not good right now. Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it, y'all. We're coming up on 2 hours on this stream. So, oh, random question. We got some more here. What random question? Are you excited for SNP? SNP. I don't know what SNP. What is SNP? I'm confused. I think a lot of good does something when attacking dropped with Eldraine. That might be true. I hadn't really thought about that, but that might be accurate. Now, I will say, maybe there's something in Historic that works, but I wouldn't know. I haven't put enough time in to try to figure that out. So, it's very possible there's something there, but I mean, even then, it's like, is it on a warrior or a samurai? Right? That's the other problem. Like, there are some things, but like, unless it's a warrior or a samurai attacking by itself, then that doesn't really trigger much either. Streets of New Capenna. All right, why is it a P? We can't do SNC or SON or SOC or anything? Like, that's weird. SNP. All right. I mean, it's probably the official abbreviation. I don't know what the 3-letter code is for that set. I mean, that being said, we also have whatever, this like 120th set or something for Magic. So it's like, I get it. I don't know. Like, I mean, like, am I excited for any set ever? Not really. I mean, just give me quality cards that are fun to play with. Like, I wasn't necessarily particularly excited about this set, but we got a lot of sweet cards to play with. And now I enjoy playing with the cards. You know, like, it's weird to be, not weird. I mean, it's just harder for me to be excited about a thing with no information. You know, I get it that people see a concept and they're like, oh man, I can't wait to see this blah, blah. But it's like, I don't think I like anything enough. Like, I'm a Dallas Cowboys football fan. If they were like, we found out a way we could do Magic and NFL and that's going to be the next set, I'd just be like, all right, cool, but let's see what it's about first. You know, like, let's see what type of cards you make first or whatever before I get excited or not. Like, I don't know. I get that a lot of people conceptually see a thing and immediately just go like, nope, I hate it. Or yes, I'm all in. But I'm like, I don't know. And to be fair, for me, Kamigawa's a good example. Like, old Kamigawa, as far as I'm concerned, was a mess. It honestly, even internally at Wizards, there were a lot of things done with Kamigawa they basically took as ways not to do a Magic set. Right? But then we did this one, and the way the art was done, the stylization of the cards, the promotion of it, like everything was so well done. Like I couldn't have even known that was going to be a thing. So taking my opinion of Kamigawa previously to now would have given me like, I'd be like, no, I'm not even remotely excited, whatever. But, you know, I kept an open mind of, okay, well, let's see what we do, since that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever. And it was pretty sweet. You know what I mean? So kind of same thing with Streets of New Capenna. We've not really done anything flavored like that. Like the closest thing might end up, if it goes away, I think we could have probably families, if you want to call it that, of 3 color combinations probably, that I guess would maybe be opposite of what we got in cons, which could be kind of neat. But I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Because like while cons was fun and we liked a lot of cards, a bunch of the cons cards in hindsight really weren't that good and didn't do a whole lot. There's a bunch of rares and mythics from that set that still to this day don't do a bunch. You know? That plus Winona could be sick. Probably, yeah. Get multiple triggers, that could be kind of awesome. On average, how many cards per set are standard playable? Oh gosh, I don't even know. I've never done the math. Like, there's a lot though in this set. I was not excited for Cold Snap just because it was not. Yeah, exactly. You weren't excited about Ice Age. Like, if I go through the decks we've done recently, like, I don't know, Golgari enchantments. What new cards were in there? Generous Visitor, Life to Umazama, Kami, Shigeki, Tatsunari, Jugen. All right, so this deck has like 5 or 6 cards. The Jun list, I think, plays just a couple. Yeah, Rabbit Battery, but that's in a lot of lists, so Rabbit Battery counts. Plus, the lands in the set were all very good. Those appear in a lot of lists. This modified deck I haven't even played yet. Kami's Flare. This I'm not really counting because it kind of only goes in one deck. Kodama definitely counts. Like, I don't know, there's a lot, actually. It kind of depends on the set. You know, like, we've had some stuff, like, you know, Eldraine had a ton. We didn't have all that many in Kaldheim. Kaldheim was a bit light. Strixhaven had a fair amount, but still probably came out on the light side of things. We got a lot in the 2 sets, the ones we just did, with the vampires and the werewolves. So like that makes sense. But that was also like post rotation. So like the closer you are to the beginning of a standard rotation, you're gonna have more cards that are playable because, well, you're replacing 4 sets or whatever, right? Whereas if you get later in the standard rotation, you're gonna have fewer cards that are playable because a lot of other cards already exist, if that makes sense. So I don't know if I would say per set is a fair assessment now that I'm thinking about it, right? It kind of depends on when they come out. Because I had almost ventured to say, if you go back and look at every standard rotation in September, October, the first set and the next set probably end up with more playable cards than set 3, set 4 of that year. And that makes a lot of sense. Because like I'm saying, by the time you get to set 3, set 4, where you're back to standard having 7 sets and 8 sets to play with, that's a lot of cards, right? So there's just less room for things. But in the beginning, where you're on set, you know, a standard with only 5 sets, well, each card has to carry more weight, you know, because there's less to choose from. So yeah, I don't know. But I will say, Kamigawa had quite a few. I mean, Bankbuster's been in a lot of lists already. Greasefang, obviously, because, you know, it works with vehicles. Tezzeret. Yeah, the new Planeswalkers are all pretty good and usable. So yeah, I don't know. I would say Kamigawa still did a pretty good job. And technically, I guess it's the 3rd, even though, I mean, the 2 Innistrad sets are kind of one big set, but realistically, it's the 3rd set in the new standard. You know, it's basically set 7 in the rotation, and it's carrying a lot of weight. There's a lot of cards that make appearances in a bunch of lists right now. So, I don't know. I don't have a good number or percentage. It's not something I've done. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's an exercise to do there, but I don't even know what I would be gaining from that. Honestly, I'm just thinking about it. Like that would be a lot of time to do a piece of content that I don't know if anybody could discern anything useful from it. Like, even if we said, okay, well, of the rares and mythics, you know, 30% are tournament viable out of a new set, and at the set at large, only like 20% of the cards are playable or something. Like, I mean, I'm just making up numbers, but like, I don't even know what like, that's the hard part, right? Like, it's information I could probably figure out or get a reasonable way to discern what that percentage is, but what am I getting for that time? You know what I mean? At the end, I have this piece of information, but how do you utilize it? And I think that's kind of the tough part. I think there are things like that that are neat to know, but it's hard to waste time on it because I don't have a way to make that work actionable. Right? If I have that piece of information, it's not going to change how I'm deck building because I'm still just using the cards that are available, right? I'm not going to open less packs because I'm still going to need the packs on Arena, you know, like, so if there was a way I could use that information, I would probably spend more time figuring it out. But off the top of my head, I don't know how I'd use that information. It's a neat question, though. I mean, as a thought exercise, I just don't know what I would do with it. I think that's the hardest thing. And unfortunately, that should be an example for life, by the way. I don't think it's wrong learning things just to learn it, because Lord knows I open like 50 tabs in a row while I'm like, the worst thing for me is reading articles and they have something highlighted and I'm like, right click, open a new tab. I'm going to read that whenever I'm done reading this or whatever. And before I know it, I'm 3 hours later reading about an entirely different subject because, you know, a thing linked to thing linked to thing. So, I mean, I'm the worst about it. But sometimes spending a lot of time to get into the weeds on stuff when it's not information that's truly actionable is not the best use of your time. And I think a lot of times when you see people that are being more successful or getting more done, it's because they're very efficient with how they're spending that research time, right? They're finding information that is helping them solve a problem or is something that they know other people can utilize, right? Because either of those can be very good and beneficial to you, right? Even for me as a content creator, if I spend time figuring out something that makes myself better or more efficient or helps me win more or whatever, totally worth time spent because it makes my content better. Or the other side of that is if I can figure out something that helps other people, my example would probably be like the Hidden Gem series, right? Because I don't necessarily need that. I know what several of the cards are. I don't really care that much, but a lot of other people have a bunch of cards and can use some money that they may not know they already have, right? So if I do the research to find more of those things, people get interested in that series, I can get more views over time because people are like, oh, I want to watch this because I always learn something watching these videos, or I'm able to make money watching these videos, right? So doing either of those things is better thing. But if I spend time, like we were just talking about, like what percentage of cards in each new set happen to be tournament viable? I mean, it might be a thing I can get some views on one time. like, you know, I don't know. Maybe some people, like, I don't know who would search for that, but it might be a thing, you know? But it's not going to help me make better content, really, for the most part. So I think it's one of those things, if you apply that to a lot of things in your life, it'll probably help. Just, I don't know, random life advice. Like, we took a weird, sharp turn there. But, yeah, random life advice. I think that's what I'm getting at there. I think it could help you be more efficient, make your life better, help make you more profitable. Yeah, but overall, I think Standard's really good right now. I think on the ladder, we have a lot of different decks we can play. We have some interesting games we end up running into a lot, so that's good. And so, you know, and I bring that up because, and we mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but I had somebody ask me, like, what cards am I looking forward to rotating out this year? Which one? That is a long time away. You know, we're still talking 9 months, 10 months, something like that. But right now, the only two cards, like I said, that I have any real qualms with are probably Farewell and Meathook Massacre, but those aren't going anywhere this year. So there's really not anything. Like, when I look around, it's like, are there cards that I don't like playing against? Yeah, but that doesn't make them broken. That doesn't make them unfair. You know, there's some I just don't like, but I don't think I'm rooting. Not like in past years where it was like Wilderness Reclamation, we all wanted gone. You know, Auron's Epiphany, we all wanted gone. But technically that's already banned, so we don't have to see it anyway, right? That type of stuff, like those cards you want gone. But I don't think we have anything like that right now. Even Blood on the Snow, it's like, this card's annoying, but there's ways to play around it, right? We can remove stuff from their graveyard and whatever and minimize their effectiveness with it. You can beat them down before they can cast it, you know, whatever, right? So there's things, but not a ton. I mean, I would say we're in a pretty good place in Standard. Like, there's, hell, practically every color in monocolor has a thing. I think we haven't seen a quality mono black aggro, so I'll probably work on that. You know, like, that's a thing. Actually, did I build a mono black aggro deck? I feel like I did, and I just didn't get around to playing it yet. I don't know why. It's probably not great. That could be one of the reasons. Maybe I didn't. I thought I might have put it together and then deleted it because I just didn't have faith in it. I probably need to start over. But yeah, mono black I think is the only thing I haven't seen. Like, we've seen white, green, blue, and red all played, all viable. You know, various control decks and different color combinations. We're starting to see some more mid-rangey decks. I mean, this is a good time. This is a good time to be playing the ladder on Standard. Like, pretty much, I would say almost anything you want to play, at least if it's focused, you at least have somewhat of a chance to get some wins on the ladder. And it's not often you get to say that in Standard. Now, that being said, I don't know how long that's going to last because we're still only, in week 3 of the set being released. But for now, it's really good. So, I mean, and maybe that says more about the community, where, like, people are always looking for the thing to be negative about, and it's like, well, what do you want to be removed or whatever, so I can be mad about that too. And it's like, there's nothing. We're fine right now. Like I said, cards I don't like. We have way too many sweepers and stuff like that. You know, that's a design complaint. But as far as just the format itself, no, I think things are good in Standard right now. I think we're in a good spot. But yeah, I'm going to use that time to wrap this up, y'all. We are over 2 hours on this stream. I didn't know how long it was going to go. Those of you that got here late, actually, you know what? Let's do this. For those of you that got here late, let me go back. Let me show everybody what we had from the Fiverr videos. I'll show you the 2 good ones. We're not going to show the bad ones because we're wrapping up. There were 2 though that we did not have a high opinion of. We did not like some of those things. Oh man, we got Inception going on. That's not what we want. Let me bring up a Fiverr window then, and we will talk about this. All right, is that gonna? Nope, that's not gonna let us. All right, I have to open up a new window here. But this is stuff you're gonna be seeing on my channel soon. So sneak peek for those of you that are here on the video. Let me size this up for everybody. Like I said, we're not going to care about the first one because the first one sucks. I'm actually going to get a full refund for that one. Very sad. The person kind of cheaped out on it. And I'm pretty sure they used a service that we'd already seen before that I actually had access to. So they really didn't do any real work. So I'm very disappointed in that. So no point in showing that one. Though this is one of 2. This was the more expensive of the 2, which is very cool. I will be doing a couple of revisions to this one. So 2 things on this I had a problem with, but overall the production on this is very good for a 5-second video. So yeah, we will be finding a way to use this. This was very cool. I'll run that back again so everybody can see it. Bots, get out of here. We ain't got time for y'all. But yeah, so we will be reusing this one for sure. And then the other one, which this is the one I like. This one I will not be getting revisions on. This one was just good right out of the gate. Like, the person that submitted this one did a fantastic job. It's a 4-second one, which is fine. But yeah, that one, that's, I mean, almost perfection. For getting the feel, the look, whatever, like, awesome. And you're talking about like a completely, totally custom thing. They hit it out of the park. So definitely excited about that one. So at some point, you'll be seeing both of those appearing on content. Maybe later this week, maybe the following week. I don't really know yet, depending where that fits in. Also, if you missed the playmat video that we did from Ultra Pro showing the playmat of the little Planeswalkers and the Street Fighter stuff, I'm going to have that video edited up later this week. And we have a box opening video. You'll get to see that as well. And I've got something else. I don't remember what the other thing was. So there's a lot of other pieces of content coming this week. So lots of fun stuff for everybody as well. But for real, I am going to wrap up here. I need to go work on some YouTube videos so y'all have stuff to watch the rest of the week. As always, all I can say is I love y'all. Thank you for watching wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And I seriously mean that. When, you know, a lot of content creators say, oh, I appreciate my community, whatever. Real talk, like right now, being a black person in a predominantly not black space and having people like attacking your content and trying to get your stuff shut down and downvoted and whatever, having a community behind you that is going out of their way to try to watch every video, comment on things, especially sharing the videos, that is super huge for getting this seen and getting the recommendation system to push it. All of those things matter, y'all. I can't say it enough. Like, I genuinely mean that. Like, those actions, and what I try to tell people is those actions offset each piece of negative action that happens. So it makes your action even more important because it's not just the positive, it's canceling out that negative action. So thank you so much for every piece of interaction you put on my content. It really, really, really matters. So thank you for that. I really mean it. If you would like to support me, and, you know, people ask, and I do mention this in the videos, but I have had people ask, like, if I have a Patreon. I do not. I decided to do YouTube memberships right here on the channel. So if you hit the join button, for as little as 99 cents, you could support the channel. I have 3 levels with different things there. Also, the top level, you can get a deck featured on the YouTube channel as well, if you want to do that. So that's a thing that can happen as well for you. So I try to offer some different things there. So check those out, please, if you want to support. And I figure that's easier because you're already on YouTube. You don't have to go set up a Patreon account. You don't have to have something going somewhere else. It's all done right here. So, yeah. Yeah, but that's it, man. Glad y'all came and hung out for just a random Tuesday afternoon stream. Or evening for some of y'all, if you're on the East Coast. So, yeah. But, yeah, like I said, going to go work on some videos so y'all have something to watch. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. I really appreciate it. Good talks. We covered a lot of ground today. A lot of strategy stuff. So I may have to change the title of this to deck building tips as well. So people can get that. But anyway, I love y'all. We'll see you around the YouTubes.